This panel, I think, is important. It goes along with the theme of today. Customer service is a pretty huge thing. I think most of you could agree. We're customers in some way, shape, or form of a lot of private sector companies and the government, right? Each and every one of us, multiple times over. A few of our government folks here represent basically all of us, or touch every one of us in some way, shape, or form every year. So I want to let our panelists talk a little bit about themselves to start us off and to explain sort of who their customers are. It's not just John Q. Citizen sometimes, but there are other units of folks that they deal with on a regular basis. And then we'll get into some talk about the technologies that they're employing and how they're doing that, focusing on users rather than just rolling out these big government programs that sometimes fail. So, Courtney, if y'all want, one of y'all can come sit over here. I mean,
I'll come over there.
Yeah. I don't want to feel lonely on this island. Courtney, all right, tell us about yourself and what you do at the Citizen Immigration Services.
Sure. So I am acting chief of the Innovation and Technology Division within Customer Service and Public Engagement. So I think we offer a number of different services. We manage all of the current customer service online tools, and then we're also working to move into a new digital environment with all of our with MyUSCIS, which is an online platform to help individuals navigate the immigration experience, but also then lead into an account experience, which will eventually also, allow for online filing for a number of our different benefits.
And just curious, how many folks interact with you guys on an annual basis? Do you have an idea? We're talking millions of folks, right?
Absolutely, right. So one of our most popular tools is the Case Status Online, so that's available now, and that's over 300,000 individuals a month are interacting with that, I believe. So, or even more than that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Bob, let's go to you.
I'm the Director of Product Technology Innovation for the Postal Service. I like to tell people my job is to make things up. What really that means is I'm responsible for the creation and launch of all of our new technology-based products. That serves every consumer in the nation that we go to every day. And it serves all of those folks who are actually sending content to those consumers. So it's your local church with the flyer, all the way up to those folks where I know all of you bought something this week and had that smiley face box delivered to you on Sunday. We do everything all over the spectrum. It's interesting in that we have to balance our consumer needs, down to the individual, with those needs of a $900 billion industry trying to get things into your mailbox.
And just a sort of a statistical point that I like, you guys are still sending a lot of mail every year. I mean, how many pieces is it? It's in the billions, correct?
So on a daily basis, you're looking at about 600 million pieces of mail in the mail stream every day. And if you can do the math to multiply it out, but that is now 7 days a week, because we do package delivery on Sunday as well as mail delivery on Monday through Saturday.
And importantly for you, because you're a fee-based agency, that's where the majority of revenue comes from. So what you're doing digitally has to augment what you're doing physically.
So,
right?
So one of our tensions is for everything we do digitally, it's an augmentation to the physical, because the physical really is where we make money and we make revenue to be self-supporting.
Okay, Jamie, the IRS. I just wrote you guys a check for like $600 that apparently I owed from 2016. I got it in the mail and I was like, what the F? But I took care of this. It was a positive experience, other than the $600 that I spent that I thought I had. But talk a little bit about what you guys do. That's a challenge for you guys, right? I mean, people traditionally don't like working with the agency they pay a lot of money to every year. But you guys, your mission's about more than that.
Well, you didn't have to write the check. You could have gone online and paid online.
I like that part.
Yeah, what a jerk. No. I did see that, but I was like, let's just, I don't know, it seemed easier.
Okay, there you go. Well, my role is to primarily oversee irs.gov, and we're doing a lot of things to enhance the digital experience online. We're rolling out several new things in the past year. We've rolled out version of our online account. We've seen the main feature there is in the early goings is being able to check your balance and then go through and make a payment. We've actually seen to one of our payment options, which we call Direct Pay, $400 million from the account experience over to Direct Pay. About 30% of the sessions that we've had in account so far have led to a payment experience as well. We've also started to pilot taxpayer digital communication. So we're testing out secure messaging. That's another key area that our users are interested in. And to answer your question, our users are similar to the answers that Bob and Courtney gave. We have, of course, a large individual taxpayer audience and a very important group for us, but we also have tax pros, large businesses, small businesses, tax exempts, lots of different folks. And the other big thing, of course, is that we just rolled out a new version of irs.gov. So these are three of the most important areas, including some others, including secure access, that we are focused on to try to enhance digital. And like Bob was talking about, for us, it's not about moving people to digital per se. It's about improving all the channels, including by bringing digital people who want to do things digitally off of the other channels so that the people who need to call or need to talk to someone can do that more efficiently.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that, sort of moving toward the digital experience. The website's a key portion, and we'll get to that. But a couple years ago, you guys were in the news for backed up call times. I mean, it made national headlines about how long it was taking people to get a hold of a contact rep at the IRS. Mm-hmm. Now, can you talk about how you've shifted in the last couple years, how you're trying to reduce those call center times, and how digital can actually help assist with that, right? Mm-hmm. The more digital experience you have, the more responsive mobile digital experience that you guys have, the fewer people you would expect are having the need to call you in the first place. So I feel like that's one positive, but maybe you can expand on that.
Yeah, a couple examples. So one, our most popular application is Where's My Refund?
Not even surprised.
And we used to get a lot of calls about that. And now, after having revamped that a few years ago, we've seen a big surge, an even bigger surge in use of that application, both on the desktop but also in the mobile application. We have IRS to Go, and a corresponding decline in the calls. So, people were calling, they wanted to check the status. It's a very simple kind of piece of information. Most people are interested in getting that online because it's quicker. So those people are off the phones, the wait times go down, and the people who really need help from our assisters are getting it faster. Another example you were alluding to, Frank, is with the rollout of irs.gov, a lot of times what we see there are people who are just need, again, a quick piece of information or a form or a publication or some piece of guidance. They're trying to not only do business with us, but they're also trying to make decisions about their business or their life. And they just most of our users, based on our research, they want in and out quick. They're not hanging out. So they go online, maybe they Google something, and they get multiple answers in the results, and they don't know which one to click on. If we can make the site more efficient so that you see the main thing at the top, and it's clear and you can get through, make the information more findable, usable, and understandable, those people are less likely to say, you know what, I don't know which one of these I'm supposed to look at, I'm going to call. So what I'm talking about is the use case where people are going online first and then not getting frustrated and not picking up the phone. And that's an important way, again, to keep the phone lines open for the people who really need direct contact with our assisters.
And we'll come back to the website rollout because there's some interesting tidbits and things that you did differently this time around that I think that bear mentioning and certainly fit along in the lines of better IT and tech. Bob, you guys have also turned to digital technology quite a bit to augment what you do. There's informed delivery, which I was curious if you could talk a little bit about that. That's rolled out now to a larger user base.
Sure. So one of our challenges as we go forward in time is digital is more and more a part of everyone's communications lives every day. And we have a challenge in keeping mail relevant to every consumer. So we've launched a program called Informed Delivery, launched back in January, and we just hit our 6 millionth user earlier this week. And what we do is we send all consumers who register an image of the mail pieces that are arriving in their box that day. So if you're waiting for an important piece of mail or if you're expecting something, you have the ability to see what's in that box. If, as the previous speaker was talking about, if you're going fishing, we'll still show you what's going to arrive in your mailbox while you're off on that fishing trip. It's important for our consumers to give them visibility. It's important it gives them access to their mail in a channel that they're in every morning. And for our mailers, it gives them an opportunity to get that additional impression in front of the market they're trying to get to. So not only do they have the really valuable physical piece, but they also have a preview of what's in there early in the day. They can plan their day. They can react to what's in the box without actually having to physically be there. And we see, on average, 20% of our users, based on monitoring the IP addresses of where access comes from, they're actually not even in the state where they're registered. So they're traveling, they're looking at their informed delivery while they're somewhere else, so they can stay on top of what's happening.
Interesting. Courtney, you've said in the past that you guys want to have more of a full-blown online experience. What does that mean?
Sure. So, well, in our online account, I think there are things like secure messaging, much more personalized information, I think, that allows people to feel like they're interacting and that we really recognize who they are as an individual and as an applicant. So that also, for example, we recently released personalized processing times. So that allowed us to identify certain milestones and how long it would take to get to each of those milestones. And that rather than just have one general processing time for everybody who filed a case, we were taking into consideration things like where the case is located and the type of case that it is, so that the information available is more accurate. That's something within the account that we're doing. I think in terms of a more full-blown digital experience, that's things like some of the MyUSCIS tools that have been out for a little while, like Explore My Options, which allows someone to go in and navigate very quickly, identify who they are and what types of benefits that might be relevant to them. So I think we're trying to build in, what an individual might do early on to look at to research what options are available to them all the way through to the processing, right? And that can be initially as a student, maybe, but all the way through to citizenship and naturalization. And that's where we've built out things like the civics test and a mobile app to allow individuals to study for the civics test before their interviews.
Is the goal to do less paper-based work on your end? Because maybe you can explain to the audience, how much are you guys dealing with on old paper records and filing and stuff like that?
Sure. So we are dealing with a lot of paper still. We would like to move into more online filing and processing of cases, definitely. I think we recognize in certain business lines, product lines, we may not get there just because of the nature of the work. Some of our humanitarian-based cases might not allow that to happen as quickly as we would like, but we would definitely like to move that direction. I think a lot of most of our cases that are paper filed go to a lockbox, for example. So there's significant costs that go into operating, managing those lockbox contracts. If we can push most of that into the digital environment, and then I think there will be a cost saving. So there's definitely, up front there's development costs, most certainly, but long term it will allow for efficiencies in the agency.
One interesting difference I feel like between you and our other two panelists is that you guys are trying to actually get rid of certain old lines of business, old ways of doing things, right? Can you explain that, and then I'll have you guys jump in because it's a little different for you.
Sure. So I guess I would say there are a couple different ways in which we're doing that. One I just mentioned. Another area is in our customer service, for example. So right now we have our call centers, but we are trying again to handle a lot of that online or digitally, right? So that's through things like the secure inbox. It's also through, what we have, Emma, which is an online kind of knowledge base that allows you to ask questions, helps you navigate
She's
the
like
website.
a virtual assistant, correct? For the audience who doesn't know.
Exactly. She's a virtual assistant.
Speaks Spanish, too.
She does speak Spanish.
Habla español. Señorita. I was just in Puerto Rico on a vacation, so I picked up a little Spanish while I was down there.
Very good.
Cervezas, etc.
Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico, before
That's
Hurricane
not where you
Irma
want to
hit.
be. Exactly.
Yes, right before that. Thank God I got out of there. But
Yeah, but the other thing I did want to mention that where we're trying to build some efficiencies is that it's for those call centers. We have one CRM system, or solution, which is new for us. We've not been connected, so we are able to transfer work around a lot more easily and allow for people to. Ideally, we're looking for our kind of first tier one assistants to be able to take on some more challenging work and not just the case status type inquiries. Where's my green card? Like we can ideally take those types of questions up front online and allow for those more complex questions to be answered through the call centers.
Gotcha. Now, on the flip side, Bob, we were talking right before we came on, and you said the employee average age is about 53 at the Postal Service. And one of your oldest carriers, who was just 80 plus years old, just retired, which is a big deal. So, I mean, the guy was fit for more than, 60?
So we, in our internal news feed this morning, one of our oldest carriers had been on his route for 60 years. And he's just retiring this week.
So 60 years, this guy saw kids, grandkids grow up on the same route that he's had 6 decades. So there's a very human face to customer service at the Postal Service.
It is. It is. And, much of what we do as the Postal Service is very human to human. Many folks, their vision of the Postal Service is that carrier who comes to their door every day. It's the person who brings them their packages, who brings them the wedding invitations from their family. It's the Christmas cards, the birthday cards. That's the face of a lot of folks. And so as we evolve digitally, it's not to replace those things, but really reinvent the mail and the package as it is, to have a digital counterpart, not a digital replacement. Certainly for us, our revenue streams come from the physical mail, and it's important to us to maintain those revenue streams, but not just from a revenue per stream perspective, it's also from a relevance perspective. If we look at the relationship people have to mail and the responsiveness people have to mail, it's very different than the responsiveness they have to purely digital communication. And so as we move forward, it's more of a augmentation than a replacement, at least for us, because our core business is so much about the physical.
Same thing over to you, Jamie. It's more like you can't just stop doing call centers because you have a really sweet app or a better digital experience. You're still going to have old people or people who just like to call and hear a human on the end talk to you. So can you talk a little bit about how you balance that, and then we'll get into some budgeting issues. But
Okay. Well, we have great assisters both on the phones and in our tax assistance centers. And when I talk to folks, and tell them where I work, they say, it took me a long time to get through, but once I did, it was great. And so we see people interested in calling. They have issues that require that. Maybe they're not, to your point, prone to go online first or at all. And some people who are, again, they have issues that sometimes where that's not their instinct, and we want to be able to serve all those needs, because for us it's about efficiency in allowing people to comply and also efficiency in our operations. So we want to have multiple channels. Yes, digital is less expensive on average, a lot less, but what we're seeing, as we were talking about before, is that we can help all these channels by improving all of them. And we have a future state program at the IRS where that's exactly what we're doing. In a coordinated effort, we're trying to improve them all. And digital, of course, being the one that is the least mature, there's a lot of focus there, but we are just as committed to the other channels.
And I encourage you guys to send in questions. I'm just going to take them as they come in. This one goes along the lines of what we were just talking about, perhaps spurred by that conversation. But you guys can all address this. Can the panelists speak to the balance between engaging digitally and maintaining more legacy systems for individuals who don't or can't have easy access or afford to go online? I mean, you're just talking about this, but perhaps you can get a little bit more in depth in that challenge, I guess.
Well, I mean, one thing we talked a little bit about, I didn't talk about it as much as paper. I mean, paper is another area where, again, sometimes people who might normally want to interact digitally, they have a specific use case that they get into and they want to use paper, and we want to be there for that. So It isn't necessarily, yes, you can break it down by audience and type of people, but you can also, within the same taxpayer or customer or whoever it might be, a tax pro, there are things that, tax pro has an office set up. They do certain things digitally, certain things by paper. You wrote a check, but you probably go online a lot more often than
No, I
writing
know
a
I can
check.
do it online. Easier or more? Is it harder to do online? I'm sure it's probably easier, right?
Well, our goal is to make it easier, to do it online when it comes to something like paying. We've been doing electronic for a long time. We had a mandate to get to 80% individual electronic filing, which we reached a while back. And so we have a lot of sort of experience in systems and organizations. We have a public-private partnership with the tax preparer and software community, and we're leveraging that to do more things online now with customer service.
Same question that I asked Jamie. It goes back to you guys a little bit. I recall, wasn't it a couple years ago, you guys figured out that most people coming to your site were using mobile devices, or a large amount of your traffic was mobile. You guys had to respond to that, right?
Right, yeah.
Explain the changing needs of your users.
Sure. Well, I think it's definitely, there's a demographic breakdown, so we are still seeing more and more people move into mobile, and we're not quite 50-50 or anything like that right yet, I wouldn't say. But I do think we're looking at making sure that all of our designs are mobile responsive. Everything that we do right now is mobile responsive. The Civics app is the first, or Civics Test is our first foray into the app world. So that is something we'd like to expand on as well, because I think we're looking at ways in which the mobile device can serve our needs as well. How can we, certain things around biometrics, right? Like, so how can we make things easier for customers to especially renew or replace their green cards, for example. So I think we're trying to figure out how best to leverage mobile to make our work happen, but while also maintaining this need for both human interaction at some point and the paper-based reality that some of our customers.
On the tech side, what kinds of technologies are you guys using, for one, and then, so what are you looking at and how are you bringing it in? I mean, we talk about government acquisition as a challenge all the time, really, in any space. It's not easy to buy technology, or at least it's often challenging, especially when you get to large programs like what you guys are doing, perhaps with IRS.gov. That's a very important point of interaction between you and then hundreds of millions of potential folks, especially come tax time. I mean, I think I remember looking at the analytics dashboard last year, and 4 or 5 IRS websites were at the top of all the federal websites in terms of active users all at the same time. So people are hugely interested in that. What kinds of technologies are you buying? How are you managing these program rollouts? Are you going more agile? Are you going more iterative? And then, we can even get into the focus groups and how you're really sort of honing in on what users want, what users like, and then importantly, what they also don't like or won't use. We'll start with you, Jamie.
We are going more agile. We rolled out online account. We did a soft launch with an MVP, a minimum viable product, in November, and we've added several features to it since in an iterative fashion. With IRS.gov, or with Taxpayer Digital Communication, which I mentioned before, we're doing pilots. We're doing a growing number of them. We have people doing exams, or what some people call audits, online. It's corresponding digitally. We've actually had people describe it as a pleasant experience. So, and we learn from that, and then we build on that. With IRS.gov, that's maybe an example where we're doing it. We're certainly focused there in terms of more of an agile approach. But that's an example where we have a technology we wanted to replace. We had a content management system, we wanted to go to a new one. Like a lot of folks in government, we wanted to consider moving to something more open source like Drupal. We in fact did move to Drupal with the rollout a few weeks ago. And so we're putting in place a pretty big change. You can't necessarily go as iterative as you might in other areas. We have 166,000 pages of content we're moving over to a new system. That's a big lift and shift. But what can we do for the user and for all our users when we do something like that? And that's where agile and iterative can kick in, where you can say, okay, even though we're doing a lift and shift, let's do a light refresh to the top of the site. Let's reduce our content footprint and get rid of some of the redundant information I was referring to before. Let's do a new navigation, a new information architecture. These are things that we felt we could iteratively add on to that big project. So the other thing is when you're acquiring, it takes time, as we know. And so what can you do? We had a CMS before. We might want to replace it, but we can do things with what we have, art of the possible. Look, we did 100 content upgrade projects while we were getting ready for the new system. So what can you do with what you have at the time you have it while you're planning your long-term technology leaps forward?
Just to stay there, did this kind of major process or, rollout require you to hire new people? Were you able to do it with existing federal workforce, increasing contracting workforce? Can you talk about that? That's a challenge a lot of agencies run into.
Yeah, there's three things that I think are key to, sustainable digital change. Number one is technology, making the right choices there and implementing them. Number two, you mentioned, we talked a little bit about listening to your users, all the different ways that you need to do that. And the third is developing teams and change management in your enterprises. So that's where people come in. And in my experience, I think there's no one silver bullet. Yes, you want to hire new people. You want to work with the people you already have, and train them and listen to them because they know a lot. Those mail carriers, we have tax assisters all over the country on the phones and in retail centers. Those people have very valuable information that bear not only on their channels but others as well. So listening to those folks, giving them new skills, bringing in new people, and yes, vendors, absolutely. It's really all of it. It's a diversity of things that come together that allow you to have real sustainable change, because you make these technology decisions and you implement them. If you don't have the team and the process behind it, then you won't be able to continuously improve, which is what is needed to meet these expectations that you were talking about.
Same question for you. Are we going to have drones delivering the mail soon, like our first presenter talked about? That would make me as a customer more psyched to get mail, but...
I think that's a bit ambitious.
Art of the possible, Bob.
I think it's great PR. I don't know about the reality of it. I think...
I'll settle for having my tacos delivered instead. I'll settle for that.
You know what? Make sure there's no dog on the front lawn, because he's going to jump up and get them. I think... really, to reiterate what Jamie was saying, is finding that mix of bringing new ideas and experience in is a challenge. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of the Postal Service is doing is we have a great management trainee program where we bring in folks right after graduation. They've interned with us, they've come into the program, bright young folks who have fresh ideas, new ideas, have got energy, that we bring in and make a part of the product development process. That we bring in and say, okay, how would you not only as an employee of the Postal Service, but as a consumer, want to use our services, leverage that energy to think differently sometimes about who we are, as we all do. Sometimes we get stuck in this is the way we do things. Those young voices are a great way for us to keep on top of what we need to in terms of what's changing. I'll have to shamefully admit I had to have one of them teach me how to Snapchat. I'm not good at it, please don't try, but at least we had some folks in the office who could help me through it.
I would tell you I would train you on Snapchat, but mine's not really an adult Snapchat. It's not professional. I don't use it for work, but well, that's another conversation and a different panel entirely. In terms of technologies, though, besides what we've talked about already with informed delivery, are we using more analytics at the Postal Service? Are we using iterative development as well to mirror some of what IRS is trying to do to better meet customer needs? And
Sure. So we have a huge analytics department. As you can imagine, with 600 million mail pieces in the stream every day, there's a lot of data that we use to analyze our service, analyze our performance, all of those sorts of things. We also have a very significantly sized engineering department where many people don't know this, but for many years the Postal Service developed its own mail processing equipment. That wasn't something we bought. We developed the technologies to do that at the scale that we do, and we're still a leader in the world of being efficient in processing mail. We're taking some of those lessons and shrinking them down into other technologies. Everyone's talking about mobile. How do we make it easier to find your package? we're looking at ways, especially for high-value items, to know where they are at every point in time, not just the point at which a human being scans it or it runs through a piece of mail processing equipment. So we have better insight into how things are moving at every point in the day. Much of that is done iteratively. As some of those things are new and out there, I mean, some of the products we're working on right now, the standards aren't even set for them. And so we start very small and we start iteratively. And so that as we explore, no one likes to fail, but if you have to fail, you fail on a very small scale before making large investments. And then you iterate through that knowledge as you gain experience with those new technologies until it is product ready. Talked about Informed Delivery. Informed Delivery went through 4 years of those small iterations before we even launched it out to the public to make sure it was something that was doable, affordable, and valuable to our consumers.
So you're testing it out on small groups of people to see the response, the usage, et cetera.
There were 10,000 people in Northern Virginia who were our guinea pigs for 3 years as we develop our product. And all of the features that are in that product now are what they gave us feedback to say, this is what's useful.
Well, that's the way to do it, though. I mean, it makes way more sense to do that than roll out a large program without asking anyone what they want, and then we see what happens in government. I think GAO had a report on projects that cost, it's over like certain dollar values, like either 10 or $100 million, and there's not even a lot of difference in government programs at that size, but most of them fail. Most of them do. People just don't ask the customers what they want, right? So that's why it's good to see customer service getting some momentum into the new administration. Courtney, kinds of technologies you used, and
We're
cool.
trying stuff here.
Actually, and the
This is iteration and experimentation.
yeah, we're getting
They're
iterative
inspired.
on the stage here. Courtney, kinds of technologies. I actually like that lighting better. Kinds of technologies that you guys are using, and sort of how do you acquire it? How do you jump through hoops to get some of this stuff? And I want to ask you specifically about NTIS in a second because I thought that was cool,
Yeah.
with that partnership. But
Sure. So that's where I was going was with NTIS. So we have a great relationship with them that have allowed us to work with a great design and development team.
perhaps you can explain to the audience what NTIS is. It's a federal entity, right?
Right,
Within
yes.
the Commerce Department.
Correct. Yes, and they kind of oversee the contract. So really, this private consulting firm is a subcontractor of NTIS. So we do work with them. They regularly we have regular quarterly meetings with them to ensure that everybody's meeting their contract requirements. But it's been a really good way to get access to highly skilled teams that are very collaborative and have produced great work for us.
I want to say one more thing about NTIS. So they take challenging issues that government customers, that rise for them, right? So they
Right.
take basically these pitches, and then they partner with the agency. So that in your case, CIS. And I think
Correct.
you guys were the first.
Mm-hmm.
You guys were the first partner. So NTIS is a federal entity. CIS comes to them and says, we got this challenge. We're trying to do this kind of technology, this kind of thing. And then NTIS will sort of come up with you guys have to come up with a case. Then they pitch it to a series of vetted companies already.
Right.
So there's like
Right.
several,
Correct.
2-3 dozen
Yes.
at least. And then they take the responses from the companies and work with you to jointly pick who has the best solution, best price, et cetera. And then it becomes an interagency agreement between the agency, you,
Right.
and NTIS for the services that they're getting. And as it was explained to me by the NTIS director, it seemed to reduce the time to acquisition significantly.
I think that's true. Yeah, absolutely. I do think we still find a lot of the same challenges with all of the other technologies that we're buying. So while it's been great to have the team, once we've identified other solutions we want to bring on, we still find there's a challenge there. But using NTIS to help us identify those problems and find the right teams to get the solutions has been invaluable. I
Are we
think.
talking about not just bringing in technologies, but also people into the
People,
organization?
yes, absolutely,
Maybe you can
yeah.
talk a little bit. What kind of people are you bringing in now?
Sure. So we're working. Our biggest contract is with as I said, a design and development firm based in Northern Virginia, and we do have about 4 development teams at the moment that are working with us about 50 contract as part of the MyUSCIS contract team, supported by about 12 federal employees that serve all as product managers at the moment, which has been great because they're getting involved. They're in the nitty-gritty day-to-day work of the contract team.
And they are able to, it seems like if something gets out of hand or there's an issue that arises, because you guys meet so frequently, that helps on the oversight angle, right? Like
Absolutely.
If stuff's going bonkers, like you guys can address it uniformly.
Absolutely. I'm on the phone with the team, with both teams daily about all of these types of things. And we've got a good OIT shop at USCIS, so have strong IT program managers as well as, and then have those direct interactions with everyone, which has been fabulous.
Yeah, I was quite impressed with the feedback. I wrote a story about them recently, some of the work that they've done across other federal agencies, and I was surprised to learn HHS, their chief data officer's team uses that. They sort of work with NTIS to bring in some new people, and some of the contributions they've had there have led to a $1.2 billion fraud bust of Medicare and Medicaid services. So they're bringing in these analytics people and putting that together with developers and then shipping this information off to agents in the field who have, and then the DOJ ultimately, who have better information faster
Right.
to then track back money that was, that was built from the government.
Right.
We don't have too much time left. If anyone has any more questions, I'll open it to questions. If you guys, if anyone has any questions, you can raise your hands if you didn't want to submit them on the app, and we'll get around to you. But I had one more question about tech and ROI, and that was just, how do you measure what you're doing on an investment side and that it's actually performing over time? That's not an easy thing to do. I'm curious about how you do it.
That's something that's also being developed. That it's not. I wouldn't call that a mature area when it comes to digital, because you're talking about, for example, somebody who is going on to IRS.gov to get a piece of information, and maybe it's just something publicly available. It's not about them. They're not logging in. How do you sort of draw that over to the effect that's having on tax compliance, on other channels? Those are things that we're developing. We've got a set of goals for our future state program, and we have a set of metrics that we're developing there. But generally, these days, what we look at are some of the things that I mentioned before. Like if we're going to roll out an account where the main feature at first is check my balance, then it stands to reason that looking at how people react to that information, whether they go on to make a payment or an installment agreement or something like that, those pieces of information. It's not macro, but for that particular product and that particular use case, that's very valuable. So going more micro, there are good analytics. We all have Google Analytics. most of us have qualitative data as well. We have other ways of seeing that. So it's maybe hard to ladder it up to, at the agency level or department level, but on the micro level, we always make sure to set goals before we go in, because we're looking at analytics before we go in.
It's also probably, this might be ancillary, but if your commissioner doesn't have to go and answer to the press why it took, customers an average of 50 minutes to get a hold of a customer service representative, I think that probably helps get some buy-in, I would say, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Of course, when it comes to the other channels, we have a lot more mature information. So call wait times, level of service on the phones and other service channels, and seeing an impact there, seeing the causation there, that's key.
Bob, how about for you? I know that because you're a fee-based agency, revenue is pretty key. So if you're doing stuff that's wasting money, you gotta cut it.
So I have not only our internal stakeholders to answer to, I have all our consumers and all of the business mailers, and often satisfaction is going to manifest itself in more mail. So if we're providing products that our consumers are engaged in, the mailing side of the house says, well, look, the Postal Service is delivering in a way that the consumer is happy, the consumer is responsive, therefore I'm going to put more mail pieces into the stream because this is an effective way for us to communicate. So it really is watching the trends of revenue that come in from our mailing customers in terms of the raw ROI. Of course, we do a lot to measure how satisfied our consumers are, how long they're on the phone, how quickly we're answering customer service, and all of those translate into cost savings numbers for us, which are a part of, I'd like to say I can only do one or the other, but both of them have to be a part of every business case we put together for the program.
Would you say that the customer service efforts are from top down at Postal Service, or do they rise from the bottom up, or what?
So, I'll say certainly leadership of the Postal Service has launched several initiatives in the last few years that are directly reportable to executive levels to improve customer service. But I'll say that guy who was walking his route for 60 years, I'm willing to bet he provided 60 years of great service at each and every doorstep. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been there. There's a photo out there of his customers tying balloons to his mail caddy as he walked the route on the last day. So it comes from both ends.
I hope you all threw him a hell of a party. 60 years is a long time. To be alive, I'm half that age. But then to be in the same job and the same
And let me say,
route.
I saw the picture. He's in great shape. He walks that route every day.
Oh, man, that's crazy. Last bit for you then. On ROI, how do you make sure the stuff that you're spending money on works and
Sure.
people continue liking it and that it's
Yeah.
good for business?
Yeah, well, I think we all do the same kind of things. What we're really looking at, and we're hitting home with our product managers right now, is taking the quantitative and qualitative research and analytics to really set hypotheses for anything that we're developing, so that we can identify a baseline and certain goals that we want to meet. And then we always go, once something is out in production, we're always looking to iterate. We take things out for continued usability testing and continue to kind of improve from there. But the idea would be using that baseline metric to really ensure that we're meeting our goals and to continue improving.
Good deal. Courtney, Jamie, Bob, thanks for giving us some of your time today. I hope you guys have a great rest of the afternoon. Thanks for listening in the audience, and that concludes this panel.